What happens when the guy flipping your pizza dough is actually the man who owns the place? Preston Langley hadn't been behind a counter in over 5 years. He built his pizza chain from a single food truck to 12 high-volume stores across the Midwest. But lately, the numbers at his busiest location weren't adding up good margins, bad reviews. The store in downtown Madison had the highest foot traffic, but also the highest employee turnover and most customer complaints. When Preston read a 1-star review that mentioned a manager yelling at a teen employee in front of the whole line, he'd had enough. He didn't want filtered reports or half-truths from his district manager again. He needed to see it himself. So on a rainy Wednesday morning, he walked into the Madison store wearing a gray hoodie, a fake beard, and a name tag that read Doug. His hair was dyed a dull brown, and he looked more like an exhausted grad student than a millionaire. The disguise worked. None of the 12 crew members batted an eye. He'd never met any of them in person. The staff rotated too often, and this store opened during the expansion phase when he'd been more behind a desk than in the field. A manager named Kyle, mid-30s, short, stocky, and wearing a Bluetooth earpiece, barely looked up when Preston walked in. "You the new guy?" Kyle asked, eyes on his tablet. "Yeah, Doug, I think I'm supposed to start training today," Kyle sighed. "Whatever, go to the back, grab an apron. Olivia'll show you around." Preston headed into the back as instructed. The walk-in freezer was already open door propped with a mop. That wasn't just a bad habit, it was a safety violation. He found Olivia by the prep station, tossing dough with practiced speed. She looked up, gave a tired smile, and wiped flour off her hands. "You're Doug. Cool. I'll show you how to take orders first. Don't worry, it's easy once you do a few." Her tone was kind but worn out. She had a faded bandage on her left wrist, likely from a burn. She didn't complain once, just kept going. By lunchtime, the place was chaos. A line out the door. Kids screaming, phones ringing, delivery orders stacking up. Kyle stood near the back, barking into his earpiece, barely touching anything. "Doug, get those breadsticks in," he shouted. "I'm on it," Preston said, sliding a tray in. They were out of gloves, so he had to use tongs, though 2 other workers just used their hands. "Should we be wearing gloves?" Preston asked Olivia quietly. She hesitated. "We should, yeah." "We ran out 2 days ago. Did you tell Kyle?" "I told him twice." Preston nodded slowly. He noticed the floor behind the counter was slick. Someone had dropped soda and it hadn't been cleaned. One of the teenage workers, a girl named Kylie, slipped and caught herself on the oven handle. She let out a sharp yelp. Kyle didn't move. "You good?" Olivia asked, rushing over. Kylie nodded, trying not to cry. Her elbow was red and swelling. Preston turned to Kyle. "Hey, she almost cracked her head open. Shouldn't we mop that up?" Kyle didn't bother lowering his voice. "You're not paid to give suggestions, Doug. Focus on your station." Preston's jaw clenched. He stepped back, grabbed a mop himself, and cleaned the spill. Later, during a 10-minute break, he sat beside Olivia outside by the dumpsters. She was eating a granola bar and scrolling through her cracked phone screen. "You've been here a while?" he asked. "Almost a year. I've stayed because the tips are decent and I like the regulars, but it's rough. Kyle doesn't really care about safety or schedules. We're always short." "Why short?" "Because people quit, fast. 2 left last week. One had a panic attack after Kyle screamed at her for being late. She was 17. Preston looked away. This wasn't what he built. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. "Why haven't you left?" he asked. Olivia shrugged. "I like the work, I just wish someone actually gave a damn." Before heading in, she paused. "You're not like the others. You ask questions, you mop floors, you care." Preston didn't know what to say. He just smiled and followed her back inside. That night, when the store finally closed at 10, Kyle tossed a crate of ingredients onto a shelf above head level. It tilted. Olivia was walking by. "Watch out!" Preston shouted and grabbed her shoulder, pulling her back just as the crate tipped and crashed down. It missed her by inches. Kyle laughed. "Relax, it's just cheese." Preston's face went cold. "That could have crushed her." Kyle rolled his eyes. "It didn't." Preston had seen enough. He was supposed to stay undercover for 3 days. He didn't make it past one. He looked over at Olivia, still catching her breath, and then back at Kyle. "I'm not Doug," he said. "I'm Preston Langley. I own this place." The silence was instant. Kyle dropped the tablet. A few workers froze. Olivia blinked. "No way," she said. "Yes way." Preston stepped forward, voice steady. "And I've seen more than enough." Nobody moved. A tray clattered in the prep area as someone's hand slipped. Kyle's mouth opened, but no words came out. Preston stepped past the fallen crate. His tone didn't rise, but every word hit like a hammer. "You've been treating people like they're disposable, ignoring hazards, dismissing injuries. I built this company on care for customers, for employees, and you've turned this store into a liability." Kyle tried to collect himself. "Look, if you wanted things perfect, you should have sent someone to support us. The labor budget's a joke. I've been running this place with half a crew most days. You chose to ignore a safety issue that nearly injured someone," Preston said. "You laughed. You didn't think because you've stopped seeing these people as human." Preston turned to the remaining staff. Most of them stood still by the prep counter or leaned against the wall, unsure of what to do. Olivia wiped her palm on her apron, still shaken. Preston pointed to the door. "Kyle, you're done here, effective immediately." "You're firing me?" Kyle asked, voice rising. "Yes." Now Kyle looked around for support. No one spoke. He grabbed his tablet, muttered something under his breath, and walked out without another word. The door clicked shut. No one cheered. No one clapped. It wasn't that kind of moment. Just a quiet sigh from somewhere near the ovens. Preston took a breath. "I know that was sudden, but it had to happen." He gestured toward the walk-in. "Let's all take 10. I need to talk to you." "All of you?" They gathered in the prep area, the only place with enough space to stand together. Nobody sat. There weren't enough chairs anyway. "I didn't come here to spy," Preston said. "I came because I got tired of hearing two versions of the truth, what I was told and what customers were experiencing. I needed to see it for myself. What I saw today, it's not acceptable." One of the younger workers, Jamal, crossed his arms. "You're the real owner." "I am," he nodded slowly. "Okay." Another worker, Maria, spoke up. "Are we all getting fired now?" "No," Preston said. "Not unless you've been endangering people or treating coworkers like garbage. And from what I've seen, most of you have been doing your jobs under conditions that never should have been allowed." Olivia leaned against the counter, arms folded. "So what happens now? I'm staying here through the weekend. As myself, not as Doug. We'll be short one manager, but I'll help cover whatever needs covering." Jamal raised an eyebrow. "You're gonna work the line. For real?" "I've done it before. I'll do it again." Murmurs passed among the group. A few exchanged glances that said, "I'll believe it when I see it." "Tomorrow morning," Preston continued, "I'll be here at open. We'll talk about what's broken and what needs to change. For now, I need everyone to go home and get some rest." As they headed out, Olivia lingered. She tossed her apron into the bin, then looked at him. "You meant what you said?" "About staying?" "I did. Then I'll be here. Early." The next morning, Preston arrived before the sun. The alley behind the store still shimmered with last night's rain. Inside, the lights flickered on one by one as he unlocked the front. By 6:30, Olivia showed up in a windbreaker, hair pulled back, coffee in hand. She walked in without a word and started prepping dough. Preston joined her. "Is it always just one person opening?" he asked. "Usually two, but Marcus called out again." "Is that normal?" "Yeah. He's good when he shows up, just doesn't show up a lot." Noted. They worked in silence for a while. At 7, Maria came in and started setting up the register. 2 more employees followed, including Jamal, who gave Preston a nod but kept his earbuds in. By 9, the first customers trickled in, mostly college students and construction workers grabbing early slices. Preston stayed behind the counter, assembling orders, wiping down trays, watching everything. He only stepped in when the crew needed help. Otherwise, he observed. By 11, the rush hit. Olivia handled the oven like a machine, flipping pies, checking temps, rotating trays without missing a beat. Maria worked the register with calm efficiency even when the line doubled back to the door. Jamal ran between stations, helping wherever he could. But it wasn't smooth. The delivery platform glitched twice, dropping orders. A driver came in demanding an update on a late pickup. One of the new hires, a soft-spoken guy named Ethan, burned his hand on a hot tray and tried to laugh it off. Preston pulled him aside. "Let me see it." "It's fine," Ethan said, shaking his head. "Just a little sting. It's not fine. Go rinse it. I'll grab the burn cream." He brought over the first aid kit, applied the ointment himself, then wrapped the hand. "Take your time, don't rush back in." Ethan's eyes shifted. "Thanks." A few minutes later, Preston went to the office. The clutter inside was worse than he remembered. Papers stacked under the desk, old receipts pinned to the corkboard. The labor schedule was still taped beside the monitor, names crossed out, shifts covered in red ink. He opened the POS system and pulled up the time cards. The patterns were obvious. Same people covering extra shifts, same people calling out. He made notes. When he came back, Olivia was yelling toward the back. "We're out of mozzarella again," Preston blinked. "We shouldn't be." "We are." He checked the cooler. "Nothing, not a single bag." "Someone messed up the last order," Olivia said. "It's been happening." Preston called the supplier. They confirmed the last delivery had been short by 3 crates. No one had reported it. He looked at the prep sheet. Kyle had signed off on the stock count. Of course. By late afternoon, the store was running low on dough. Olivia had prepped extra, but without enough cheese, several menu items had to be pulled. Customers weren't happy. Preston stood beside the register and explained calmly. "We're short on a few ingredients due to a missed delivery. We're doing everything we can to get restocked by tomorrow." Most people accepted it. One didn't. "You run a pizza place and you don't have cheese," the man barked. "I understand your frustration," Preston said, meeting his eyes. "If you'd like a full refund, I'll take care of it now." The man left, muttering. Preston refunded the charge himself. Behind the counter, Maria leaned in. "You handled that better than Kyle ever did." "How would he have handled it?" "Probably told the guy to leave and called him a name." Preston frowned. "He talked to customers like that?" "Once told a woman with kids that if they couldn't wait 10 minutes they could go starve." Preston didn't respond. He just returned to the prep area and started slicing vegetables. He stayed through closing again, helping mop, restock, and count the drawers. When everyone had gone, he sat at the back table and wrote out a list of everything that needed fixing, staffing gaps. Supply chain checks, equipment maintenance, manager training, burnout. He didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, he showed up with breakfast sandwiches for the entire crew. He didn't make a speech, just handed them out one by one and got to work. By noon, he had already interviewed 2 assistant managers from nearby stores to help temporarily. By 3, he'd connected with HR to schedule safety training for the entire team. By 5, he'd placed a fresh supply order himself and verified the delivery time. And Olivia? She pulled him aside between rushes. "I don't know what's more surprising," she said, "that you're still here. Or that things are already starting to feel different." He didn't answer right away, just looked around the store. "Give me the weekend," he said, "then we'll talk about what comes next." By Saturday morning, it was clear the store was stretched thinner than ever. With Kyle gone, the already tight schedule had collapsed. Preston had pulled in 2 assistant managers from other locations to help cover shifts, but neither knew the team well, and their presence only partly stabilized the chaos. Still, the mood in the store had shifted. Nobody said it aloud, but people showed up on time. Olivia, who usually opened alone, was greeted by 2 crew members already prepping when she arrived. Preston didn't bother with an office that day. He stayed on the floor, manning the oven station between rushes, hopping over to slice duty when Ethan's injured hand slowed him down. He told the others not to overextend, they were already pushing their limits. It was just past noon when a small crowd of high schoolers came in wearing varsity jackets, loud and impatient. One of them knocked over a soda cup near the entrance. The liquid spread across the tile, ignored. "Someone get a mop now," Preston said without looking up from the oven. A few feet behind him, a young employee named Drew glanced around, then made no move. "Drew," Preston said again, sharper this time. "Mop." Drew exhaled and walked off slowly. The spill stayed untouched for nearly a minute until Olivia finally grabbed the mop herself and handled it. When Preston confronted Drew by the dish station later, he kept his voice calm but direct. "Why didn't you grab the mop when I asked?" Drew shrugged. "Didn't think it was my job." Preston didn't break eye contact. "Everything here is your job when it keeps people safe." Drew looked away. "Didn't seem like a big deal." Preston stepped closer. "A wet floor near the entrance with a dozen teenagers walking through, that's a lawsuit waiting to happen. If someone slips, that's on all of us. You don't want to be responsible for that." Drew gave a half-hearted nod. "You're on thin ice," Preston said. "This isn't optional." As the line grew, Preston moved back to the oven. The crew was holding up, but barely. Maria was on register again, bouncing between taking orders and bagging slices. She looked pale, her voice thinner than usual. Preston flagged Olivia. "She's been pushing through a fever," Olivia said quietly. "Didn't want to call out again." Preston walked over. "Maria, when was the last time you sat down?" "I'm fine," she said, eyes darting between the next customer and the screen. "You're not. Go sit." "Now?" She hesitated, then looked at Olivia. She nodded once, and Maria stepped off the line, breathing heavily. Preston turned to the assistant manager from the Northside store, a sharp-eyed woman named Lexi. "You're on register until we catch up." "Make it clean." Lexi nodded and jumped in without a word. By mid-afternoon, the oven overheated. The temperature display blinked, then went dark. Olivia caught it first. "We're losing heat. That fan's been stalling all day." Preston crouched to inspect the back panel. The vent was caked in dust. "A buildup that should have been cleared months ago." "Shut it down," he said. "We'll switch to the backup." "It's not hooked up," Ethan said from the prep table. Kyle said it was a waste of electricity. Preston stared at him. "The backup oven's not even connected." "Nope." "Been sitting unplugged since I started." Preston didn't respond. He just grabbed his phone and called the regional maintenance lead. "I need a tech here within the hour. Emergency fix." He hung up and looked at the team. "We'll keep the menu tight until we're back up. No sheet pans, only rounds." "Make it work." They adjusted. The line slowed, but nobody walked out. At one point, a customer snapped about a wrong topping, and Lexi handled it with a quiet firmness that made Preston take note. She didn't flinch, didn't over-apologize, just corrected the issue and moved on. He pulled her aside between orders. "You've dealt with that before." Lexi gave a dry laugh. "You kidding? Northside gets college kids during finals week. Half of them don't know what they ordered. I've seen worse." "You want to stay here?" he asked. "Long term," she paused. "Depends." "This team's solid, needs structure, but I'm not looking to put out fires every day." "You won't be," Preston said. "Not anymore." As the rush faded, he checked the schedule. Sunday was a disaster waiting to happen. Only 4 staff listed for the dinner shift. Olivia was on for a double. "You're not doing a double tomorrow," he said to her. "I'm pulling in 2 floaters from other stores." She didn't argue, but she didn't thank him either. Just nodded and went back to stacking dough trays. The maintenance tech arrived around 5:30, older guy with a toolbox and a tired face. He took one look at the oven and muttered, "This thing's been choking for months." Preston stayed beside him as he worked. The vent fan had blown out from a clogged motor. Would have cost them a full shutdown if it had happened on a busier day. "Put us on monthly servicing," Preston said. "No exceptions." The tech nodded. "You got it." At closing, Preston gathered the crew in the break area. He waited until everyone had finished their final tasks. "I'm not going to drag this out," he said. "You've all held this place together under pressure most teams wouldn't survive. You deserve better support. Starting Monday, you're getting it." He turned to Ethan. "You're off prep until your hand's healed. I'll have HR adjust your hours accordingly." To Maria, "You're getting 2 paid sick days. Use them." "We'll figure out coverage." To Lexi, You're the acting store manager for the next 2 weeks. If things go well, we'll make it permanent. Lexi blinked. You serious? Dead serious, to Olivia. You're getting a raise, and I want you overseeing cross-training for new hires. You know this place better than anyone, she tilted her head. That official, he nodded, starting tomorrow. Then he looked at Drew. You're off the schedule until further notice. You'll meet with HR Monday. This isn't a place where people ignore safety, especially when they've already been warned. Drew's jaw tensed. You can't just cut me like that. I can, and I am. This isn't personal. It's about accountability. You had your chance. Drew left without another word. Once the door closed, Preston looked at the rest of them. I'm not here to make speeches. I'm here because I saw what happens when leadership disappears. That ends now. Nobody clapped. Nobody needed to. Some nodded. Some just stood silent. Olivia stepped forward. What about after you leave? Preston looked at her. I'm not disappearing again. You'll see me, not just in memos or meetings, here where it counts. She held his eyes for a beat, then gave a small nod. All right, she said. Then let's keep going. Sunday started quiet. Overcast sky, cooler air. The kind of day that usually meant a steady stream of families and delivery orders. Preston arrived just before 7 with a clipboard and fresh coffee. Lexi was already inside, sleeves rolled up, reviewing the shift assignments beside the walk-in. She didn't say much, just gave a short nod and handed him a revised schedule. It was tight, 6 people for the full day, but accounted for callouts and breaks with precision. I moved Ethan to register for the lunch window, Lexi said without looking up. He's still favoring that hand. Maria's staying home. I told her not to think twice. Preston scanned the sheet, then set it down. You good with this crew? Not a dream team, but they show up. That's more than I can say for half of Kyle's hires. Anyone you're not sure about? She hesitated. Dante. Quiet, won't look you in the eye, doesn't cut corners, but he moves like he's waiting to be told what to do. Preston nodded. I'll keep an eye. The first few hours rolled by with little trouble. Preston cleaned the floors himself before open, then helped Olivia double-check the cooler. The mozzarella delivery had arrived early. This time, every crate was counted and logged in front of 2 witnesses. By 11, the line was building. A family of 5, a woman with a stroller, a couple of students with matching headphones. Jamal, who hadn't been scheduled, walked in wearing his hoodie and carrying a basketball under one arm. You're not on today, Lexi said from behind the counter. Know that. I just didn't want to be home. Figured I'd help if someone flaked. Lexi looked at Preston. Up to you. Preston nodded. Grab an apron. Clock in. As Jamal disappeared into the back, Preston glanced toward the ovens. Olivia was adjusting the flame level manually. She caught his eye, still not holding temp exactly. Better than yesterday, but not great. Noted. I'll get maintenance to do a full teardown this week. At 12:30, the pace quickened. Orders doubled. Dante was on prep, slicing veg and loading trays. Lexi called out instructions while juggling the register and delivery tablets. Ethan moved steadily at the front, his bandaged hand now covered with a clean glove, tapping out receipts with care. But as the counter filled, so did the pressure. A man in a polo shirt leaned across the sneeze guard, pointing at the menu board. Why does it take 15 minutes to heat a slice? He snapped. It's pizza, it's already made. Preston stepped in before anyone else could respond. It's made, but we heat to order. Keeps it fresh. You're welcome to wait or I can refund you. The man looked him up and down. You the manager? Yes. Then you should know this is the worst run location I've been to. The girl on prep looks like she's about to fall over. Preston didn't look back. You're welcome to leave. The man scoffed, muttered something about amateurs and walked out. As the door closed, Lexi exhaled. Guy's been in before, always looking for a fight. Preston didn't answer. He was watching Dante. His hands had stopped moving. The knife rested by his side. His eyes were low. Dante, Preston said. You all right? The kid didn't look up. Didn't like how he said that. About Olivia, Dante nodded once. Preston walked over. You've been doing solid work today. I keep my head down, I don't talk much, people don't mess with me that way, but hearing him go after her like that. You wanted to say something? I didn't want to blow up, that's what I'm trying to avoid. Preston put a hand on the prep table. You kept your cool, that matters. If you ever feel like something's not right, customer or staff, you don't have to stay silent. Bring it to Lexi. Or to me. Dante gave the smallest nod, then turned back to the Peppers. At 2, the delivery window slammed open. The driver, a lanky guy in his 20s, dropped a thermal bag on the counter. Order 712 isn't ready. That's strike 3, he said, voice raised. Lexi walked over. We sent out 712 10 minutes ago. Check your app, he stared at her. I know what I saw, it wasn't there. You're yelling at the wrong people. Want to double-check it? The driver turned, muttering something under his breath. Lexi's jaw tightened. Repeat that, she asked, stepping closer. The driver paused. I said you people always act like you're too busy to do your jobs. Preston stepped in. You people, the driver looked at him, then at Lexi, then Olivia behind the oven. Yeah, always the same kind of crew. You think you're running a real kitchen? Preston didn't blink. You're done here. You don't speak to anyone in this store again. Leave. Now. The driver opened his mouth, but Lexi had already pulled out her phone. You want me to call your dispatch? She asked. He backed off, grabbing his bag without another word. As the door slammed shut, Ethan looked up from the front. Was that what it sounded like? It was worse, Olivia said, wiping her hands on a towel. Preston turned to Lexi. Send his name to HR, I'll follow up with the platform, we'll blacklist him. Lexi was already typing. The rest of the shift passed in silence. Focused fast. Preston didn't say much, neither did anyone else, but the energy had changed again. At closing, he gathered the crew again, not in the back this time, but by the front counter, where the lights were still warm and the chairs hadn't yet been flipped. I want to be clear about something, he said. What happened today, someone coming into this space and speaking like that, it won't be tolerated. Not here, not ever. Nobody spoke, but heads nodded, even Dante looked up. I didn't build this place for perfect food, I built it for people. And if that means we lose a few customers who can't respect the people behind the counter, so be it. Lexi folded her arms. It's going to take time, people don't unlearn bad habits overnight. Preston looked at her. Then we start now. He handed her a small folder, updated policies, scheduled templates, and a breakdown of the new safety compliance plan. She took it without a word, then he turned to Olivia. There's going to be a leadership training series starting next month. I want you in the first group. Not a manager, she said quietly. Not yet, Olivia nodded once. All right. As the crew began wiping down the final surfaces, Preston stayed behind, watching them move. No yelling, no slammed doors, no panic, just work, steady and quiet. He stepped outside into the evening air. The sky had cleared. Streetlights flickered on across the avenue. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel like he was walking away from a mess. He felt like he was walking towards something stable. Back inside, the lights dimmed one by one. The store, finally, was beginning to become the place he had always imagined it could be.